Tell you, Kouri Richins has now been sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole.
In a courtroom in Park City, Utah, 3 children were asked to speak. They had each written their words, every sentence, every feeling, for years of it, put onto paper and handed to an adult they trusted, because not one of them could bring himself to walk through those doors. 3 boys, 3 therapists carrying their words, 1 judge listening. What those children wrote, what they chose to say about the woman who raised them, is what this entire case ultimately came down to. Not the forensic evidence, not the financial records, not the text messages shown to a jury. What 3 children put on paper is what this documentary is built around. And before those words were read, the woman at the center of this case stood at a podium in a lime green jail uniform, looked toward the seats where her sons should have been sitting, and said 3 words. "I'm coming home." This is Dark Crime World. Drop your location in the comments right now. If you are new here, subscribe before this goes 1 second further. We cover cases like this one, built on verified court records, confirmed facts, and the human weight behind every headline. Before we continue, this documentary covers a serious criminal case involving the loss of a family member and the lasting impact on 3 young children. Some details in this report may be difficult to process. Stay with us, because the full story of what happened to Kouri Richins, who he was, what was done to him, and what his sons chose to say 4 years later, that story has never been told in full. Until now. Before anything else, you need to understand who was lost. Kouri Eugene Richins was born on May 13, 1982, in Bountiful, Utah. He was the eldest child of Gene and Linda Richins, and he grew up on a working cattle ranch. From the time he was a boy, his days were built around hard work. Hauling hay, mending fences, feeding livestock. He was not handed anything. He was a serious athlete. Cross-country, basketball, baseball, soccer. After high school, Kouri served a 2-year mission in Mexico City through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He came back speaking Spanish fluently. He then earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Utah in International Studies with a minor in Spanish. He did not stop there. Kouri co-founded C&E Stone Masonry with his business partner Kouri Richins, a company he built from nothing into a thriving operation. Before Kouri, Kouri had been married once before. That marriage ended in betrayal. His first wife had been unfaithful, and the divorce was not easy. He rebuilt. He moved forward. He met Kouri Richins in college. They had their first son before they married. On June 15, 2013, they made it official. Together they had 3 sons, Carter, Ashton, and Weston. Kouri coached all 3 of his boys. Every practice, every weekend, every game. His father Gene would later stand in a courtroom and tell a judge that Kouri's youth soccer team still ends every huddle the same way they did when he was alive. 1, 2, 3. Kouri. He was 39 years old when he was found unresponsive in his own home on March 4, 2022. His father described him at sentencing as a light, to his sons, to the boys he coached, and to the entire community that knew him. That is who Kouri Richins was. Kouri Richins was born on April 20, 1990, in Oklahoma. Her childhood was not stable. She moved 17 times across different states. When she was 6 years old, her father, a successful engineer, went to prison after a drunk driving incident involving a law enforcement officer. Her parents divorced after that. She moved to Utah with her mother and brother in the year 2000. Her mother struggled with compulsive gambling. By Kouri's own account, she spent weekends in casino hotel rooms watching her mother lose money, their house, and their cars. Stability was not something she grew up with. In 2021, Kouri attended a wellness retreat in Arizona where she was asked to write her life story. She wrote it in the 3rd person. In that document, she described meeting Kouri in college and said she instantly fell for the idea of a marriage with children and a stable family. She got pregnant her sophomore year. She said she spent years chasing that image. She also wrote that her life began to unravel in 2018 when she discovered Kouri had been having an emotional affair. She went to counseling for anxiety and depression. The marriage, from her own account, had been struggling for years. In 2019, Kouri launched Kouri Richins Realty, a house-flipping business based in the Park City area. She hired a nanny to care for the boys and dove into real estate. From the outside, the business looked like a success. She projected an image of financial achievement and a polished lifestyle. That image and the reality beneath it were not the same thing. And that gap between what Kouri showed the world and what was actually happening inside her finances would become one of the most important threads prosecutors pulled on at trial. On June 15, 2013, the same day Kouri and Eric married, they signed a prenuptial agreement. That document would later become central to the prosecution's entire theory of motive. The prenup established that neither party had rights to the other's income or property. There was one critical exception. If Eric died while they were still legally married, Kouri would inherit his estate. But if they divorced, she walked away with nothing. Eric's masonry business was thriving. His share of C and E stone masonry was valued at approximately $2 million. He had built financial security for his family. Kouri, meanwhile, had begun building something very different. When Kouri started Kouri Richins Realty in 2019, she funded it using a home equity line of credit for $250,000, drawn using Eric's power of attorney, without his knowledge. That loan put their family home on the line. The business grew fast. Too fast. One renovation project in 2019 became 15 by 2021. The debt followed. Between January 2021 and March 2022, Kouri attempted 236 overdraft transactions totaling more than $300,000. Her accounts incurred thousands of dollars in fees from rejected transactions alone. By the time Eric died, her total debt had reached approximately $7.5 million. She was paying $80,000 per month to lenders. Forensic accountant Brooke Carrington testified at trial that Kouri's financial enterprise was not struggling. It was collapsing. Her exact words, "It was imploding." A friend who vacationed with Kouri in 2019 testified that during that trip, Kouri told her she felt trapped in her marriage because of the prenuptial agreement. She could not leave, not without losing everything. In 2020, Eric discovered what had been happening with his money. He contacted both a divorce attorney and an estate planning attorney. In secret, he was so concerned that Kouri monitored his emails that he communicated with his attorney exclusively through his brother-in-law, Clint Benson. He changed his will, removed Kouri as a beneficiary, and placed his sister Kouri Richins Benson as the trustee of his estate. He also told his family something that no one who heard it forgot. "If I die, you need to look at her, because I think she is trying to harm me." At the same time Eric was quietly restructuring his estate, Kouri had begun a romantic relationship with a man named Robert Josh Grossman. Grossman was a contractor who had worked on her renovation properties. They had originally met while she was flipping a house in South Carolina. He moved to Utah in 2020. Kouri let him live in homes she was working on. She bought him 2 trucks. She gave him money regularly. Text messages shown at trial captured the nature of that relationship clearly. In one message, Kouri wrote to Grossman, "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect." The prenup had trapped her. The debt was consuming her. The affair had given her a reason to want out. And under the terms of that prenuptial agreement, Eric dying while they were still married was the only exit that paid. Between 2015 and 2017, Kouri took out at least 4 life insurance policies on Eric without his knowledge or consent. The combined value of those policies was approximately $2.2 million. Prosecutors pointed to one policy in particular. It went into effect on February 4, 2022. The application contained errors, including an incorrect Social Security number for Eric. An insurance agent testified at trial that the application appeared to have been submitted with inaccurate information. Prosecutors argued Kouri had fraudulently obtained that policy. February 4, 2022 was 10 days before what prosecutors described as the first attempt on Eric's life. Eric, who had grown increasingly suspicious, had quietly taken steps of his own. He changed the beneficiary on his personal $500,000 life insurance policy to his sister Katie, removing Kouri entirely. He also placed his $2 million business buy-sell agreement inside a trust, with Katie as trustee. Kouri did not know any of this had happened. She believed that if Eric died while they were married, she stood to collect the life insurance payouts and inherit an estate prosecutors estimated at more than $4 million. She had built the entire financial picture in her mind. She had taken out the policies. She had done the math. What she had not accounted for was that Eric had quietly done the math too, and had spent months making sure the answer would not go her way. The prosecution's case did not begin on March 4, 2022. It began years earlier. Eric's family told investigators that during a vacation to Greece in 2019, Eric became seriously ill after consuming a drink his wife had prepared for him. No charges were ever filed in connection with that incident, but investigators considered it relevant context as the full picture of the marriage came into focus. Then came February 2022. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, Kouri prepared a meal for Eric. Shortly after he ate, he broke out in hives and had trouble breathing. He used one of his son's EpiPens and recovered. Eric called 2 friends that day. He told both of them the same thing. He felt like he was going to die, and he believed his wife had something to do with it. The defense argued he had an allergic reaction. Prosecutors argued the evidence told a different story. The day after Valentine's Day, February 15th, Kouri texted Robert Grossman, "If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me tomorrow, you would?" Grossman replied, "Yes, in love with you, of course I would." On February 26, 2022, Kouri picked up a supply of pills from a designated location. The specific details of that transaction were established at trial through phone location data and witness testimony. Kouri Richins died 6 days later. Prosecutors laid this timeline before the jury in their closing argument and said it plainly. The February 14th incident failed. Rather than reconsider, Kouri spent the next 17 days preparing to try again. The prosecution's most important witness was not a forensic scientist or a financial expert. It was Carmen Lauber, Kouri's housekeeper. Lauber testified that Kouri contacted her in early 2022 and asked her to reach out to someone for pain medication. For an investor she knew, Kouri said. Lauber connected Kouri with a man named Robert Crozier. When Lauber texted Kouri to let her know that what was available contained fentanyl, Kouri's response was 4 words. "Okay, go ahead and get them." Lauber testified she made multiple pickups from Crozier, who operated out of a gas station in Draper, Utah. Digital forensics analyst Chris Katradamos presented location data from both Lauber's and Crozier's phones to the court, placing them at that location on dates that matched the timeline of the alleged attempts on Eric's life. Hundreds of text messages between Kouri and Lauber from early 2022 had been deleted from both of their devices. Records confirmed they had been exchanging multiple messages every single day that Lauber said she was acquiring the substances. Those messages were gone, but the records of them were not. Days after Eric's death, Kouri sent Lauber a text message. It read, "Still have your hookup?" Investigators also searched Lauber's home. They found drug-related paraphernalia, a firearm she was prohibited from possessing, and a copy of Kouri Richins' obituary. Lauber was interviewed by investigators 6 times over approximately 10 hours. She was granted immunity in exchange for her testimony. The night of March 3rd into the early hours of March 4th, 2022, Eric and Kouri were celebrating. The occasion was the closing of a significant real estate deal, the purchase of a 20,000 square foot unfinished estate in Heber City, Utah, known as the Midway Mansion. Kouri had acquired the property alongside a group of investors for $3.9 million. Her family said the project had the potential to generate a $12 million return if completed successfully. Eric's family told investigators he had not been in favor of the purchase and that the couple had argued about it before his death. Kouri told investigators that evening she poured Eric a Moscow Mule cocktail to mark the occasion. She then went to sleep in one of the children's rooms, she said, because one of their sons was having nightmares. What the middle son later told investigators about that night presented a different picture. He recalled being put to bed earlier than usual, without a bath. He remembered their parents' bedroom door being locked. He remembered the television playing loudly from inside the room. At one point, he tried to reach the key to the bedroom using a broom handle. He said his mother told him to go away. At approximately 3:31 in the morning on March 4th, 2022, Summit County Sheriff's deputies and emergency medical staff arrived at the Richins home in Camas, Utah. The responding paramedic noted that Eric appeared to have been without a pulse for some time. Kouri Richins was declared deceased at the scene. He was 39 years old. The autopsy confirmed he had approximately 5 times the concentration of fentanyl in his system that is considered lethal. The medical examiner also determined the substance was not medical grade and had been ingested orally. The only people home that night were Kouri, Eric, and their 3 young sons. Kouri's 911 call was played for the jury at trial. Defense attorney Catherine Nestor opened with it. "Those were the sounds of a wife becoming a widow," she told the jury. Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth told the jury something different. Those were the sounds, he said, of a wife becoming a black widow. The morning after Eric's death, Kouri closed on the Midway mansion. That same day, the estate attorney called to inform her that Eric had established a living trust and had placed his sister Kouri Richins Benson as trustee. Kouri had not known. Her response, captured by the law enforcement officer present during the call and later testified to in court, was to say, "What is wrong with you people?" She handed the phone back to the officer. Shortly after, a confrontation occurred between Kouri and Eric's sister Amy Richins at the family home. Kouri had contacted a locksmith to open a safe Eric kept in the garage. Amy was present and told her she had no legal right to open it and no claim to what was inside. The confrontation became physical. Kouri later pleaded no contest to a Class B misdemeanor in connection with that incident. In the weeks that followed, Kouri filed a civil lawsuit against Eric's estate, claiming entitlement to his assets under the terms of the prenuptial agreement. A judge ruled against her, determining that Kouri Richins Benson, as trustee, controlled Eric's business interest, not Kouri. The Midway mansion was eventually sold for $3.75 million after Kouri's arrest brought the project to an end. Eric's family did not accept the initial version of events. Family spokesman Greg Skordas told investigators and media that Eric was not an opioid user and that the circumstances surrounding his death did not add up. Eric's family hired a private investigator. They also retained an attorney to protect his estate. Summit County Sheriff's Detective Jeff O'Driscoll was assigned as lead investigator approximately 1 year after Eric's death. His investigation covered Eric's prescription history, which was limited. It covered phone records, financial records, and interviews with people in Kouri's circle. What investigators found on Kouri's phone became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Her internet search history included searches for the lethal concentration of fentanyl, how poisoning is documented on a death certificate, luxury correctional facilities for wealthy individuals in the United States, women's correctional facilities in Utah, and whether law enforcement can compel a lie detector test. Those searches had been conducted while Eric was still alive. Kouri was formally charged on May 8, 2023, more than a year after Eric's death. At that point, she had already published a children's book about grief and appeared on local television to promote it. She was arrested approximately 1 month after that appearance. She had been held at Summit County Jail without bail ever since. In March 2023, while the investigation into her husband's death was ongoing, Kouri Richins self-published a children's picture book titled Are You With Me? The book followed the story of a child who loses his father and wonders whether his father is still present during the important moments of his life. Kouri dedicated it to, in her words, "My amazing husband and a wonderful father." The book was written by a ghostwriter. Text messages recovered from Kouri's phone showed her discussing the project with her brother. The cost to produce it was $10,000, and she would earn $5.35 per copy sold. In April 2023, Kouri appeared on the local Utah program Good Things Utah to promote the book. She described the writing process as bringing peace to her and her boys. She said her husband's death had been unexpected. 1 month later, she was arrested and charged with his murder. After her conviction in March 2026, the book was removed from Amazon. During the investigation, the sheriff's office received an anonymous package containing a copy of the book along with a handwritten note that read, "There are 2 sides to every story. This is the true Kouri, a devoted wife and adoring mother." A court subpoena to Amazon revealed the package had been sent by Kouri's mother, Lisa Darden. In September 2023, investigators searched Kouri's cell at Summit County Jail. Inside a book, they found a folded document. 6 pages, handwritten. The title, written in capital letters at the top of the first page, read, "Walk the Dog." The letter was addressed to her mother, Lisa Darden. It instructed her mother to share the contents with her brother Ronnie, in person only, because Kouri suspected her phone calls were being monitored. It directed her brother to contact her defense attorney and relay a specific account, that Eric had a history of obtaining controlled substances through workers at a ranch in Mexico, and that he had later asked Kouri to procure them through her housekeeper. The letter also contained instructions to erase records of her relationship with Robert Grossman from her mother's phone. It directed her mother to locate photographs of Eric's sister's children and mail them anonymously to media organizations. The goal as Kouri wrote it, was to create conflict. The letter closed with, "Tell him I need him to do this. Bring me home." The defense argued the letter was fiction, part of a 65-page mystery novel Kouri had been writing while incarcerated. It was not found in a writing folder or a manuscript. It was found inside a book. Judge Richard Mrazek allowed it into evidence. Lead Detective Jeff O'Driscoll read the letter aloud in court as the final witness for the prosecution. Prosecutors told the jury it was a step-by-step plan for fabricated testimony designed to construct an alternative version of how fentanyl entered Eric's system. It became one of the most widely discussed pieces of evidence in the entire trial. If you have been watching since the beginning and you want to keep following cases like this one, cases reported with verified facts and no filler, subscribe to Dark Crime World right now. Hit the button. Drop your location in the comments. We will not stop here. The trial began in February 2026 at the 3rd District Court in Park City, Utah. Judge Richard Mrazek presided. The case was scheduled to run 5 weeks. Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth laid out the state's position in his opening statement. "The evidence will prove," he told the jury, "that Kouri Richins took her husband's life for financial gain and to pursue a future with another man. More than anything," he said, "she wanted his money to sustain an image of success and affluence that had no foundation in reality." Defense attorney Catherine Nestor opened by playing the recording of Kouri's 911 call. She told the jury those were the sounds of a wife losing her husband. She pointed to Eric's history with prescription pain medication and suggested he may have obtained the substance on his own. The prosecution had a direct response to that argument. Kouri herself had told law enforcement on the night of Eric's death that her husband had no history of illicit drug use. Over 13 days of testimony, prosecutors called more than 40 witnesses. Forensic accountant Brooke Carrington walked the jury through the financial collapse of Kouri Richins Realty, the debt, the overdrafts, the failed projects, and the life insurance policies Kouri had taken out on Eric without his knowledge. Digital forensics analyst Chris Katradamos presented the phone location data connecting Lauber and Crozier to the drug acquisition timeline. He also confirmed that hundreds of messages between Kouri and Lauber had been deleted from both devices during the relevant period. Carmen Lauber testified about her role in obtaining the substances at Kouri's direction. Robert Crozier, the dealer, gave inconsistent testimony. In a prior jailhouse interview with investigators, he had confirmed selling fentanyl to Lauber. On the stand, he said he did not remember the conversation and had been in a difficult personal situation at the time. Robert Josh Grossman testified about his relationship with Kouri. He confirmed the text messages. He also told the court that approximately 2 weeks after Eric's death, Kouri asked him how it felt to take someone's life, referencing his service in the United States military during the Iraq War. Eric's sister Amy Richins testified that she had urged her brother repeatedly to leave the marriage. He refused, she said, because he was determined to protect his sons. Estate attorney Crystal Bowman Carter described the phone call she received from Kouri the day after Eric died, after informing her that she had been removed from the trust. She said Kouri's reaction was immediate and intense. Detective Jeff O'Driscoll closed the prosecution's case by reading the walk the dog letter to the jury. The defense rested without calling a single witness. Kouri did not testify. The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. Guilty on all 5 counts. Aggravated murder. Attempted aggravated murder. 2 counts of insurance fraud. Forgery. Eric's sister Amy Richins spoke outside the courthouse after the verdict was announced. She said the family was in shock. She said it had been a long time coming. And she said she was grateful that her brother finally had justice. It was the day Eric Richins would have turned 44 years old. The 3rd District Court in Park City carried a particular weight that morning. Eugene Richins was there. Kouri Richins Benson was there, along with her husband Clint. Amy Richins was there. Extended family and friends of Eric filled the courtroom. Kouri sat at the defense table in a lime green jail uniform. Gene Richins spoke first. He told the court that his son would never get to stand on the sidelines and watch his boys grow up. He described Eric as a light to his sons, to the boys he coached, and to the entire community that had known him. He told the judge that Eric's soccer team still ends every huddle the same way. 1, 2, 3. Eric. Kouri Richins Benson addressed Judge Mrazek directly. She is now raising Eric's 3 sons alongside her husband Clint. She asked the judge to protect those boys from spending the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. She told the court there are 3 children who live with a constant fear that their mother could one day show up and take them away. Deputy Summit County Attorney Brad Bloodworth made the state's position clear. A person like Kouri Richins, he said, should never again be among the rest of us. Her children should never have to worry that they might one day encounter her. Then 3 therapists walked to the podium. Not 3 boys, 3 therapists. Eric and Kouri's sons had each written a victim impact statement. Each one had made the deliberate decision to send a mental health professional into that courtroom to carry his words rather than stand there himself. Therapist Jessica Black told the judge their role was simply to read what the boys had written, exactly as they had written it. The boys, she said, wanted the court and the world to hear their side. The oldest son was 13 at sentencing. He had been 9 when his father died. His statement said he does not miss his life as it was. And when it came to his mother, he said he does not miss Kouri. The middle son, now 11, told the court that Kouri had taken everything from him and his brothers, that she had put herself first, that he would not feel safe if she were ever released. He also wrote that he had been placed in a position of having to look after his younger brother because his mother was not watching over them. The youngest son was 9 at sentencing. He had been 5 years old when his father died. He said if his mother ever got out, he would be scared. He would be angry. He would not want to go near her. He said he wants her in jail forever. These were not statements shaped by lawyers or reviewed for legal impact. They were written by 3 children, in their own words, and delivered by adults they had chosen to trust. Kouri's brother Ronnie Darden spoke on her behalf. He said he could not state with certainty what had happened to Eric, but that he was certain his sister was not responsible. Kouri's mother Lisa Darden submitted a written statement through the defense team expressing the same position. Defense attorney Wendy Lewis made a final argument for a lesser sentence, telling the judge that if the boys ever change their views and a less severe sentence is no longer possible, that day in court will become another source of pain for them. Before the judge spoke, Kouri was given the opportunity to address the court. She stood at the podium in her lime green jail uniform for approximately 30 minutes. Her sons were not present. She spoke to them anyway, directly, as though they were sitting in the rows in front of her. She told them she loved them. She said she understood they were angry and that their feelings were valid. She asked them not to give up on her. She told them to be like their father. She acknowledged publicly, for the first time, that she had fallen in love with another man during her marriage and had lied to Eric. She told her boys that when they are older, they should never lie to the people they love. But through 30 minutes at that podium, through every message to her sons and every piece of advice she offered them, she did not once say she was responsible for Eric's death. She said the accusation was an absolute lie. She said she would not accept responsibility for something she did not do. She said the idea was just as absurd to her that morning as it had been 4 years earlier when Eric first died. She told her sons the justice system would get it right eventually, even if that courtroom could not. And then, just before Judge Mrazek prepared to deliver the sentence, Kouri looked toward the empty seats where her children would have been sitting. And she said, "I am coming home. Not today, not this year, but we are going to make this right." Judge Richard Mrazek had heard all of it. He had heard Kouri Richins describe the permanent absence left in a family and a community. He had heard Kouri Richins Benson ask him to protect 3 boys from living their entire lives in fear. He had heard, through 3 therapists, what those boys had chosen to put into writing. And he had heard 30 minutes of denial from the woman standing before him. His words from the bench were measured and final. Kouri Richins was convicted unanimously, he said, and beyond a reasonable doubt, of attempting to take Eric's life, her husband and the father of their 3 children. And then, having failed in that first effort, of spending the next 17 days not reconsidering, but preparing to try again, and ultimately completing the act through the administration of a substance. A person convicted of doing what Kouri Richins was convicted of doing, he said, is simply too dangerous to ever be free. Life in prison without the possibility of parole for the aggravated murder conviction. Consecutive sentences followed. 5 years to life for attempted aggravated murder. 1 to 15 years for each of the 2 insurance fraud convictions. Up to 5 years for forgery. No fines were imposed. Judge Mrazek also acknowledged what no one in that room could fully resolve. He said he could not know how the boys' views of this case might evolve over the next several decades. He said he hoped all those affected would find their way to a state of peace. Within hours of the sentence being delivered, Kouri's legal team announced they would appeal and file a motion for a new trial. That process will take years and faces a significant evidentiary record to overcome. Phone location data, forensic financial testimony, hundreds of deleted messages, the walk the dog letter, the drug acquisition chain, and a toxicology report confirming a lethal concentration of illicit fentanyl in Eric's system. Kouri Richins is currently serving her sentence at the Utah State Correctional Facility. She also faces more than 24 additional financial criminal charges in a separate case that has not yet gone to trial. 3 boys are now living with Katie and Clint Benson, Eric's sister and brother-in-law. They were 9, 7, and 5 when their father died. They are now 13, 11, and 9. They have spent 4 years living through every stage of this case. The investigation, the arrest, the 3-week trial, the verdict, the sentencing hearing where they chose to send their words in through adults rather than stand in that room themselves. Each one of them said the same thing in his own way. Keep her there. Eric Richins built C and E stone masonry from the ground up. He grew up on a working ranch. He served a mission in Mexico City. He earned his degree. He coached every one of his son's teams. He built a life, carefully, consistently, and with everything he had. He also told his family, before any of this ended the way it did, that if something happened to him, they needed to look at her. They looked. The court listened. And on the morning of May 13, 2026, the day Eric Richins would have turned 44 years old, the answer came back. His sons are growing up. His soccer team still says his name at the end of every huddle. And the woman a jury unanimously found responsible for taking him from his family will spend the rest of her life inside a correctional facility with no possibility of release. That is where this case stands today. Dark Crime World covers cases like this one. Fact-driven, evidence-based, built on verified court records and trusted reporting. If this documentary gave you something, a clearer picture of this case, a deeper understanding of what happened inside that courtroom, then this is exactly where you should be. Subscribe right now if you have not already. Drop your location in the comments and tell us the case you want us to cover next. We read every single one. We will be back.